The freak flaw might be freakier than we think. Alibaba descends on a secret location in Silicon Valley, and every one of your Google contacts just got a facelift.
This is Twit. Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Wednesday, March 4th, 2015. This episode of Tech News Today is brought to you by Prosper. Prosper is a peer-to-peer lending marketplace that connects people who are looking to borrow money with those who have money to lend. Visit prosper.com/twit and receive a $50 Visa gift card when you get a loan. And by Personal Capital. With Personal Capital, you get award-winning financial tools, unbiased advice, and a transparent view of all your investments. Best of all, it's free. To sign up, go to personalcapital.com/TNT. Good morning. Tech News Today is the show where we talk about the tech news with the journalists who report it. I hope you've had your coffee because you'll want to be paying attention today. I'm Megan Morrone filling in for Mike Elgan, who's live from Barcelona at the Mobile World Congress. And also joining me today is regular co-host Katie Benner, tech columnist at the Bloomberg View. Hi, Katie.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
Great.
Good. And joining us live from Mobile World Congress in Barcelona is our news director, Mike Elgan. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing great, Megan. How are you?
I am great. Today is kind of your last big day, isn't it?
We're going to go do some stand-ups tomorrow, but it's the last big day of live coverage, last day that we're going to do some live Skyping in for TNT. But yeah, we're going to go back to the show tomorrow and see what happens. There's a lot of little bits and pieces that I want to target tomorrow and capture some video and get some interviews. But yeah, the biggest hurdles have already been overcome.
All right. Well, after 4 days of coverage, what are the biggest trends that you've seen so far?
Well, one of them is biometrics. And when you think of biometrics for a mobile phone conference like this, you're thinking fingerprint readers. And of course, there are lots and lots of those. One of the things we talked about yesterday on TNT was the fact that Apple kind of stunned and set back the industry by buying Authentech a couple of years ago, because that they had the best fingerprint reader. You just put your finger on the fingerprint reader, and then you get this scan. It could go through sapphire glass, which Apple did use. Then the rest of the industry was stuck with those kind of old and busted biometric scanners that you have to swipe your finger, which is, it sounds like it's not that big of a deal, but in fact, that could be the difference between people using it and not using it. And so now what's happening, what we're seeing at Mobile World Congress is lots of companies, especially from Taiwan, Korea, and China, have developed fingerprint readers, some of them with patents and so on, that can work like Touch ID, at least in theory. We don't know if they work as well as Touch ID, but in theory, you put your thumb on there and they scan. We've also seen some iris scanning biometrics for phones from a number of companies. And so biometrics is a big, big deal because, of course, passwords are a disaster. And the number of security problems that have been coming out lately have been numerous. As we know, on anybody who watches this show and TN2 knows that, you know, every day pretty much there's a big security story. So biometrics is a big, big deal. Another one is 5G. We're seeing 5G everywhere. Unfortunately, nobody knows what 5G is. Nobody agrees on what it is, but lots of companies are very eager to associate themselves with the concept of 5G. So
it's better than 3G. That's what we know, right?
It's two better.
Two better. Great.
Yeah, and so we're gonna, I'm sure, figure out and arrive at some definitions about what 5G is. Right now, you see a lot of doubling of antennas and a lot of tricks to get to those super high-speed downloads. All of it is theoretical. All of it is experimental. None of it is shipping. There is no 5G shipping for any smartphones that we know of right now. Also, another big trend is the Internet of Things, and of which is showing up in cars a lot here. There are a lot of cars. And I'm thinking, how do they get such a great parking spot right here on the show floor? But in fact, they're cars that they're showing off Internet of Things technologies in those cars. And of course, home automation, which is the Internet of Things applied to home stuff. And a lot of companies from all over the world really are coming out with warmer and fuzzier and always smartphone controlled home devices that unlock doors, that have cameras that can provide security, that have sensors that can tell the air quality of a home, that can do all the things that home automation devices tend to do, but they're getting simpler, they're getting cheaper, and hopefully they're getting better. And of course, wearable computing, with lots of smartwatches, lots of creative ideas for things that you can do with wearable computing. And the thing that all these have in common is that these are areas outside the smartphone universe in terms of the devices that are required for things like biometrics, home automation, wearable computing. But they're being used. And so why are these things in a smartphone show? Because first of all, they're always connected to a smartphone, and second of all, they're using similar components, radios, batteries, all the things that have been developed for smartphones are being used in these non-smartphone devices. And I think the biggest trend, and this has been the case for a couple, 3, 4 years now, is everybody's trying to catch Apple. Apple got 93% of the industry's profits in the fourth quarter. They get a huge number of unit sales, and they are the design leader. They're sort of the usability leader. Some would argue that there's no way that the technology leader, but at this point it doesn't matter because they're winning most of the money. So everywhere you go, you see these companies develop biometrics to match Apple. They're developing phones that look like the iPhone and that have great cameras like the iPhone, and that all of these areas that Apple has successfully clobbered the competition in the fourth quarter with its iPhone 6 and 6 Plus. The whole industry is trying to catch up, and Apple isn't even here theoretically. Of course, Apple executives are here in the hundreds and not identifying themselves, which is always the case. And so those are the big trends, and I think those are mostly expected. What's not expected is some of the innovation that's happening all around these different areas.
Mike, you mentioned that companies are out there. We've heard a lot of news from Google and from Samsung, especially vis-a-vis trying to catch up with Apple. Are there any big companies that aren't there that are notably absent?
I think that the biggest one is the absence of Xiaomi. Xiaomi is the up-and-comer that everybody's scared to death of because they've grown so fast. They're pretty much a brand new company that have just, their unit sales and their market share is just completely off the charts. And this is a company that doesn't even try to make profits. They don't even claim that they're a smartphone company. They claim that they're an internet company. And we've seen all these other Chinese companies that are much smaller and much slower growing, but you've heard the names. You're going to see a lot of those companies in our coverage. And they're all there except for 3 of them. Xiaomi is the biggest one. Also Meizu, which is for a while was a company that just made copycat iPhones that ran Android. Now they're trying to become a more legitimate company, and they're certainly succeeding in China. And Coolpad, of course, is another Chinese company. So these 3 Chinese companies were not there when pretty much all the other ones that I've ever heard of were there. Lots of them, maybe a dozen Chinese companies. And again, I think this highlights yet another trend, which is the emergence of these Chinese smartphone companies in a big international stage like this. I mean, Huawei's presence was enormous. They had several booths, one of which was the size of a city block, and it was 2 or 3 stories high. And there were so many people coming and going from this booth that they had a setup that was kind of like the New York City subway, where they had these turnstiles, and they were scanning badges as fast as they could, and you had to wait 10 minutes to get into the booth. And again, Huawei doesn't have a huge presence, a lot of mind share in the United States and in Europe, but they are coming on strong. They're already a big company. They have close ties to the Chinese government, and so they really meant business here at Mobile World Congress. And I can't even imagine how much money they spent to have such a large presence here.
All right. Well, is there anything else you'd like to highlight from the show before we go?
Yeah, it was really great to see lots of very innovative technologies and products from lots of different countries. We saw, country booths with, really good, solid technology demos from Tunisia, from Turkey, from Israel, France, the UK, Ireland. It just goes on and on. All these little country pavilions were more impressive than I've seen in previous years. One of the most impressive countries, I think, at this show was Korea. And we hopefully put together a nice little tape, a few interviews with a few Korean companies, some of them very small startups, that are doing some really innovative and fun things. So let's take a look at that. All right, here at Mobile World Congress, we're looking at a lot of wearable devices and a lot of smartwatches, but here's a really interesting one in the Korea Pavilion. Do it. And this is really interesting because it looks to me like it's modular, but can you explain this this watch?
This is our product. It's very small, light, and our first intention is like this, change for the necklace or another accessories because it's very small, and it can calculate calories, steps, and patterns of sleeps, and when you receive the calls and message, it will be a vibrate and shine. And also you can touch this button, you can receive the calls, can change the mobile to a speakerphone. And during of this battery is 4 or 5 days, but you need just 45 minutes for charging it.
And will this work with all phones or just Samsung phones, just Android phones?
Just a moment we have just with Android, but in April we will have also to Apple.
Here at Mobile World Congress, one of the big themes is virtual reality. There's a lot of virtual reality stuff going on, some of it very cool, and this is one of the coolest virtual reality things we've seen so far. Can you tell us what's going on there with the Oculus Rift and the, it looks like a machine gun of some kind?
Actually, Oculus gun is not our product. We've invented the controller, the gun, because at the moment we have used a mouse, keyboard, or joystick to play a shooting game. But with this gun, you can feel like as if you're a soldier while playing it.
I see. And is this a fairly unique product?
Yeah, as far as I remember, it's the world's first product because it's our patent. Because you can, there's a sensor inside of your gun that can recognize your movements.
So essentially what you're doing is inside the virtual reality space, the gun itself has a positioning sensor so that it plays with the game, it knows where the targets are, it knows where the user is and all that kind of stuff. Are you working on any other products that are similar that will help people in virtual reality gaming?
There's another product which you can use as a mouse that recognizes your gesture.
What is the name of the actual product? When will it be available and how much will it cost?
In terms of game controller, it's called Railgun. We haven't launched yet in any market, but we are going to launch it for the first time in South Korea market in April.
What is this skateboard thing here? Can you tell us about that?
It's a skateboard that is connected by Bluetooth with a glove, and it is a battery with a motor, and you can control the skateboard with your hand.
So it's hand gestures that controls the skateboard to stop and go and faster and slower.
It depends on the position of your hand. You can control the skateboard that can go forward, backward, and stop. And it's autonomy of 30 kilometers. The weight is 5 kilos and it's 65 centimeters of long.
And this is in the Korea Pavilion. Can you talk about the company that makes this?
The company is a Carnival Cruiser Board, but we are all together with Creative Device Lab, that is the government of Korea, is the partner.
So the government of Korea has Creative Device Lab, which is which brings together smaller companies for things like this to develop
develop all the new generation things. Yes.
When might this be available?
Available in 3 months, maybe more and less 3 months. Yes, maybe it could be in the market. Yes.
And where will it be sold? Korea, globally, or?
In Korea is it could be made in Korea. This one, and after with the clients, we can contact with all of people. Yes.
Thanks for talking to us.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
The company name is Union Community, and this is our new product called Nurugo. This is a fingerprint authentication device.
And it does a really interesting trick. Can you tell us about how this works?
Sure. Basically, we are using the camera here to take a photo of your fingerprint. So if you see here, if I try to take a photo directly, it's not possible. So we made this optic module, so you can put it onto it, and then you punch your finger.
So it turns a phone that does not support fingerprint authentication and makes it a fingerprint reader, essentially, just like one of the ones that's built in. But if you already have a phone that doesn't have a fingerprint reader, now you can.
Correct, yes. And basically, we support now Android version. Any phones with Android version, you can just buy this as an accessory and you can attach to it, and you have now fingerprint on your phones.
Is that attached magnetically?
Magnetically, yes. So you can simply, if you don't want to use it, you take it out. if you want to just put it onto. And good thing about Techno Optic is that even your fingers are very wet. Sorry.
So it doesn't care if it's wet because it's using light.
Correct. Optics. You see very clean images that you'll see. And we can capture the in-know, and you can do the verification as match success.
Now, do you have software to go with it?
Yeah, sure. We have software. We also provide API as well. So any developer would like to use our fingerprint module, they can develop by themselves as well.
When was this product announced?
It's the first time that we launched at the Spain here. However, our company, we're doing the fingerprint business more than 15 years. We are now focusing on our access control or time and attendance, fingerprint, biometric, even the face as well. This is our base, so we use that technology to implement it in this smartphone business.
And where will people be able to buy this, and how much will it cost?
We are actually, at the moment, we're looking for B2B business, so we're looking for distributor. And price will be for distributor about $10. Yeah.
Wow, that's a good price. All right, well, thank you so much for talking with us today.
All right, thank you.
Now, that last product we saw is a perfect example of the kind of innovation that we're seeing a lot at Mobile World Congress from Korea and other countries as well. And what I mean by that is it takes a long time to actually develop a product that's going to be integrated into a smartphone and then be sold to the smartphone company. And then the smartphone company has to develop its phones based on that design. And it takes a long, long time. And so you see a lot of impatience, as you saw with that product, where they're not even going to wait for a product that's going to be integrated in the phone. They're going to solve the problem of fingerprint authentication with existing phones by using the camera. It's really kind of a crazy idea. And it seemed to work very well. Now, another little tidbit from that segment is you notice that the fingerprint readers had the branding on it, Touch ID, which, of course, is the branding for Apple's fingerprint authentication technology. So they might want to change that.
Yeah, they might get in a little bit of trouble. I like the skateboard. Did you get to ride it?
I did not. I got to ride a kind of bicycle thing later on the day, but no, the skateboard looked pretty cool. And I think the bigger story there is not just the skateboard, but the idea that a glove becomes a controller for anything using wireless technology via a smartphone. So you have a smartphone in your pocket, you have a glove on that has sensors that understands the gestures that you're doing, and then you have a world of hand gestures for controlling literally anything. We also saw earlier in the week the use of that for industrial applications, where somebody who's doing some very complicated industrial process can use a glove to control something that used to be a wall of controls and knobs and dials and so on. Now it's a glove with gestures. Pretty cool. It's a pretty cool world of gestures using wireless technology that we're heading into.
Yes, very Minority Report. Well, thank you so much, Mike. Today concludes your coverage from Mobile World Congress. Thank you for coming on, and we'll see you back on Monday, correct?
You are correct, at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. We're a little early on Monday because we're going to be covering the Big Apple event. So thank you so much, Megan. You're doing a great job, and keep up the good work.
Well, thank you, Mike. Look for another daily live special this afternoon highlighting all of the booths and vendors that Mike had a chance to see today. This episode of Tech News Today is brought to you by Prosper. Prosper is a peer-to-peer lending marketplace that connects people who are looking to borrow money with those who have money to lend. So let's say you need money. You could borrow from your friends or your family, but that can get awkward. Borrowing money from credit card companies can be a little risky, and traditional bank loans are just outdated. A low fixed rate loan with Prosper.com might be just the option you're looking for. With Prosper, you can borrow up to $35,000 in as few as 5 days and use the money for what you need right now. You can pay off high credit cards or put the money in your business. Now, my family of 5, we live in a 1,300 square foot house. It's starting to feel a bit small as my kids get older. If I were to get a loan from Prosper, the first thing I do with it is add on to our house. What would you do? Prosper's online marketplace connects people who need money with those who want to invest in you or in me. Don't rack up more debt on your credit cards. Pay them off with Prosper. To check your low rate instantly without affecting your good credit, go to prosper.com/twit. And now, for a limited time, Prosper is offering Twit viewers a $50 Visa gift card with your low interest loan. You can get up to $35,000 in your account in as few as 5 days and that $50 Visa gift card that I talked about. Go to prosper.com/twit for this special offer just for Twit viewers. Now let's move on to some other stories that we are covering. On Tech News Tonight yesterday, we talked briefly about the newly discovered but actually quite old freak flaw that leaves Apple and Google users vulnerable when they visit secure websites. Now, this flaw essentially undermines some kinds of encryption on the web, and it wasn't technically an accident. It was based on a former government policy dating back to the Clinton administration that required weak encryption in software exported out of the U.S. Craig Timberg, Washington Post technology reporter, is here joining us to explain more about the freak flaw. He wrote about it today in the Washington Post. Hi, Craig.
Hi, Megan.
So for those who don't know, what exactly is the freak flaw?
This is a problem with encryption that can crop up when you try to go to a website. It looks like your device is encrypting in a secure way to, for example, whitehouse.gov or americanexpress.com. There's no sign that you haven't gotten a proper encrypted link, but in fact, it's very possible in certain circumstances to break that link and watch your traffic and see all your username and password and that kind of information.
How long has this flaw been around for?
Well, it was built into cryptographic algorithms more than 15 years ago in the 1990s, and it was intended to be used for non-Americans. The idea was that at that point cryptography was seen as a military technology, and so they wanted one grade that Americans could use and another grade that was used by others, and that presumably was so that intelligence services could still gain access to people's communications when they used them overseas. The problem is it got baked into all of the software for essentially every cryptographic system in the world because it had to be in there, and it basically nobody bothered to turn it all off on all these pieces of software.
So who's affected by the flaw right now?
So this is a kind of a targeted attack. You can be vulnerable if you're logging on to a site through, for example, a Wi-Fi hotspot at a coffee shop or at an airport. If you're in a country whose government is spying on its own citizens, like China, Iran, quite a few others around the world, they can do what's called a man-in-the-middle attack and place themselves in between your device and the website you're visiting that you think is secure. And what they do is they force your device, your computer, to use this weaker type of encryption that has been sitting on these computers forever. And then with the weaker encryption, they crack the keys. It takes a few hours, but it's very doable, I'm afraid.
Wow. And now, is there a mobile risk because so many of us have moved to mobile computing? We're not even using our laptops anymore.
It's actually worse on mobile. Android devices in particular are very vulnerable if you access the web from the Android native browser. If you use an iPhone, Apple is working on a patch that's going to come out next week, but an iPhone at this point is vulnerable as well. I mean, pretty much, the testing they did found that even after a certain number of repairs to the system, they found that more than a third of all the encrypted websites in the world, and that's more than 5 million websites, are vulnerable to this kind of attack. And every Android, at this point, every iPhone is completely vulnerable as well.
So you talk a little bit in your article about how this was rediscovered. Can you tell us a little bit about who rediscovered it and how they did that?
Some French researchers were just doing some routine testing of encryption algorithms and encryption systems, and they found this little problem. Like, oh, isn't it funny that you can still gain access to this old, bad, easily broken encryption that was never supposed to be used by anybody anymore? And they thought it was a very minor thing, but they researched it. They began communicating with some of their colleagues in other countries, and one of the guys I quote in the story, a guy named Matt Green at Johns Hopkins, he started running some tests. He got some of his other people to run tests, and they found that it was actually almost everywhere. Essentially, no one had turned off the switch on all this bad encryption, and that it was possible to force people's browsers to use the bad encryption instead of the good encryption. And it turns out to be a massive kind of vulnerability. And as the experts point out, this is telling at a time when U.S. officials are talking about trying to put doors, back doors, front doors in iPhones or Android smartphones because the encryption is now so good. And the point of these encryption people is, you know what? When you make policies that require weaker security, it can come back and bite you in totally unexpected ways, even decades later.
Wow. And so what are we as users supposed to do now? What is the takeaway for me or you as we hop onto our phones and start using the web?
Well, the good news is that if you're if you take the updates from Apple supposedly will have this sorted out next week, and then you ought to be fine. It's going to take a lot longer for Android devices, as I and others have written. The Android ecosystem is very fractured. It's what the term experts use. Google makes the operating system, but then Motorola makes the phone, and then Vodacom sells the phone to you, right? So there's all of these actors have a stake in this process. It's actually very difficult for Google on its own to get a patch out to its machines. They're creating one now. They've made it available to their partners, but there's really no way to know for sure how long it's going to take your individual device to be safer. Now, it is safe to use the Chrome browser, both on your computer, and many Android users also have the Chrome browser on their phones. That does not have this problem, thank goodness. But we're really going to need the people who run the servers of the world to close off this problem. One of the biggest cloud providers in the world, named Akamai, made a change last week that has solved this problem on quite a few websites around the world. So hopefully over the next few weeks you'll see this hole closed off.
Well, Craig, I know you're on a deadline. Are you allowed to tell us what you're working on next, or do we have to wait and find out?
I think I need you all to wait and read the Washington Post. Okay. That would be the best thing.
So keep checking back to the Washington Post. You can also check up on what Craig's doing on Twitter at Craig Timberg. Is there any other place we could check for your work, Craig?
Once I publish a story, it seems to end up all over the place. Yesterday, I was amused that our friends over at the New York Times had a little link to my story in their what we're watching column. So you never know where these things end up.
Well, thank you so much, Craig.
Thank you.
And now on to some Google headlines. Google Contacts got an overhaul today. According to the Gmail blog, there'll be a new design, a better way to find and root out all the duplicate contacts, and an integration between Gmail, Google+, and Hangouts. You can also see your most recent meetings and conversations with your contacts. And now, Katie, this reminds me a little bit of, I don't know if you remember this, it was maybe 3 or 4 years ago, maybe even more than that. Google tried to integrate all of their services, and suddenly you could see everything that your Gmail contact was doing, like on Blogger. I think they scaled it back pretty quickly, but now we're maybe a little bit more used to this. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that we've gotten used to sort of always knowing what our contacts are doing, where they are, and being able to track them all the time. So this actually feels more like Google is catching up, even though they were ahead at some point in the game. We've caught up psychologically with where that old product was, and so now they're trying to roll it back out so that they can own things that Facebook is trying to own in terms of location services and keeping us constantly connected to other people.
Yeah. Do you use Google Contacts, or do you have a different way of keeping your contacts sorted?
I think like most people, I use Google Contacts, but then I also use WhatsApp and I use my iPhone. So I have all of my contacts on my iPhone. It's so scattered right now. So whoever can get us to use one service all in one place is going to have a lot of information about us.
Mm-hmm. So another Google news, the French blog OneNet is reporting that Google plans to debut iOS support for Android Wear at the I/O conference in May, which is a month after the release of the Apple Watch. Now, Google hinted at this last year, and I'll be really interested in seeing if it happens.
Don't you think that it's necessary, though, with the Apple Watch coming out? Just because the promise of Apple is that they have such great services and software.
I think it is necessary for Android. I think it would be nice if the Apple Watch did that also, but I know they're not going to. So more Google news. The popular Google-owned traffic app Waze will integrate Amber Alerts, according to a post on the Waze blog. Waze says they will scan the Amber Alert information from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children every 10 minutes, and then they'll display notifications to get people in appropriate geographic areas to only those people, and then only if your car has been stopped for 10 seconds. This update is U.S. only, and yesterday Google announced that Waze would be pre-installed on Android phones along with Google Maps, Hangouts, and other services. Move over PlayStation and Apple TV. Last night, Nvidia announced the Shield console, a $199 streaming TV designed for Android gaming. If you're a little confused, you're not alone. This is the third device from Nvidia called the Shield. The first Shield was a portable gaming device released in 2013, and the second was a tablet that was released last year. Now, Jason, our producer, you have the Shield tablet, and you love it.
Yeah, I have the Shield tablet. I love it. I use it with the controller all the time. It's a great device. It's really powerful. It's a very high-speed tablet gaming and for apps. And the best thing is with this grid that they're talking about, it gives you the ability to play games that I don't even own that exist on a server where I can get to them. I don't own any of these games, but with this new subscription service, I can play those. Right now it's free because they haven't launched the console yet, but with the tablet, I can get to them, and also with the Shield Portable, which is the one that looks a lot like this controller, but has the screen built into it, I can get to those.
So those were the devices that were released last year. What they're talking about today is a gaming console. Do you think you'll get that, Jason?
That's a tough one. I love my Xbox One, so I might.
What about you, Katie? Is this something you're interested in, the Nvidia TV?
I think this is probably something that Jason's more interested in. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Well, you never know. Maybe this whole world of Android gaming will be open to you, and you never know. Alibaba, once a part of the cloud, the e-commerce giant opens a cloud computing hub in Silicon Valley today in a secret location. This is a market that's, of course, already crowded with tech giants like Microsoft and Google and Amazon. Reuters says the new data center is designed for Chinese companies with operations in the U.S.
Sure. And, I think that it's important to note that Alibaba already has a cloud computing division. So this is sort of a way for them to extend their services beyond China. They're saying that it is for Chinese companies that are doing business in the U.S., which has privacy implications. But also, I think that cloud services is a place where a company like Alibaba can start to compete and not worry not worry so much about the optics of selling in the U.S. and going head-to-head with sort of more consumer-facing giants like eBay and Amazon.
So this is going to be for enterprises, right? And so so cost will be a concern, whereas I know just this week, Obama came out against what China was doing in putting back doors, just what we were talking about, getting rid of encryption. So do you think that enterprises will be concerned with that, or do you think the bottom line will be what they're after at this point?
Well, Alibaba has been historically very good on cost and offering low-cost products, but also we're seeing this trend of companies trying to figure out how to use national products. So whether it's in Asia, Chinese companies saying, okay, we might not want to use U.S. products. We might not want to use Cisco, which they've already come and said, because they're worried about U.S. backdoors and NSA activity. And then, of course, the U.S. saying the same thing about Chinese companies. So the idea of a Chinese company being able to use a server in the U.S. that's created by a Chinese company could be very appealing.
Well, in Hollywood news, streaming service Sling is starting to get a few news stations, according to the Sling blog. AMC, IFC, and others will now be available on their Best of Live TV subscription, which is $20 a month, and also includes ESPN, HDTV, and others. What about this, Katie? Is this more up your alley?
Yeah. Sure. I mean, I'm more likely to spend time that I don't have watching TV than playing video games. But who knows? I could find all sorts of ways to waste time. This is great. I think that what Sling is doing, people keep on saying again and again, watch this really, really closely, because this is a product that actually has an opportunity to keep up with the way that we want to watch television, which is when we want, at a lower cost, with great shows.
Well, it is interesting because they're kind of going backwards with the way they were before. It used to be cable, like you just get everything and you have to pay for everything. And now it's like, okay, well, you can have this. You can have Mad Men and you can have Portlandia. And then next we'll give you ESPN. And, it's just slowly parceling it out. It's interesting. A lot of investors are charged high fees and hidden costs by their traditional brokers, mutual funds, and their 401ks. These costs add up and they could actually steal years from your retirement. Personal Capital is free and secure, and it's already helping more than 700,000 investors just like you identify and eliminate high fees and manage and grow their wealth. It's your money, so you should keep more of it. It's time to trade up. Your broker may be taking money from your pocket with hidden fees and no transparency. They win and you lose, but not with Personal Capital. With Personal Capital, you get award-winning tools, unbiased advice, and a transparent view of your investments. It's really a win-win. Personal Capital is a complete, intuitive financial dashboard with all of your accounts in one place so you can make smarter financial decisions and manage your portfolio like a pro. Discuss your financial goals, risk tolerance, time horizon, and retirement planning with an advisor at Personal Capital. It's a new free offer. All you have to do is track your accounts worth $100,000 or more on the Personal Capital dashboard, and you'll qualify for a 30-minute review. You'll also get tailored advice on optimizing your investment. So why wait? Take control of your financial future right now. Personal Capital gives you total clarity and transparency to make better investment decisions right away. Now you can get a free no-obligation portfolio consultation when you link $100,000 or more in assets on the Personal Capital dashboard. It's easy to do, and the results may benefit you for the rest of your life. As soon as you link your accounts with $100,000 or more in assets, Personal Capital will contact you for a free 30-minute portfolio consultation. Just set up your free account at personalcapital.com/TNT, and we thank Personal Capital for their support of Tech News Today. Now, our TNT fan of the day is a young man from Texas, Gage Robinson, who listens to our show while drawing maps of Africa, presumably for school, or he could have a side job as a cartographer. There's Gage now. Thanks for listening. How do you watch or listen to TNT? You can record a video, take a picture of yourself, or set up and post it on Google+, Twitter, or Facebook, and use the hashtag HowIWatchTNT, and we will find it. And Katie Benner, thank you so much for joining me. What are you working on for the Bloomberg View?
Well, I have been covering the Ellen Powell Kleiner Perkins trial. I was in court yesterday. I just posted a quick piece today, so that's ongoing. And I was also looking at sort of the role that venture capital and private equity firms are playing in this late stage funding boom that is making companies like Uber and Snapchat and Airbnb worth tens of billions of dollars right now. So it's exciting times. It's really fun.
Well, thank you. And I know you are an avid Twitter poster, so I have been following. It's been really interesting following how you pull quotes from the Ellen Powell trial, and it's really fascinating to me, and I love your work. So you can follow Katie at Katie Benner. Is that your Twitter handle?
KTBENNER. And you can also go to BloombergView.com.
Thanks, Katie.
Thank you.
And if you're interested in keeping up to what we're doing here, subscribe to Tech News Today on Stitcher or iTunes or YouTube or Feedly or Yahoo or RSS. There's also other options. Please leave a review and let us know how you like the show, or let us know if you don't like the show. We are open to whatever you have to say. You can choose your favorite way to subscribe at twit.tv/TN2. You can also watch us live every weekday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, 1800 UTC at live.twit.tv, or the app or browser plugin of your choice. You can find all those at twit.tv/apps. If you're ever in the San Francisco Bay Area, we would love for you to come in and watch us live. We will even give you a comfortable chair. Follow us on Twitter at Tech News Today TV. And if you're a technology news fan, and I hope you are if you're still watching, come hang out with us in our Google Plus community. Just search Google Plus for Tech News Today. And also subscribe to our subreddit at technewstoday.reddit.com. I watch that for Tech News Tonight, too, and find some good stories, and I love to see what you guys post on there. And you can follow me on Twitter at Megan Morrone. Let us know what you think. Send us email to tnt@twit.tv or call 260-TNT-SHOW. Also, don't miss Tech News Tonight, where I'll be back at 4 p.m. Pacific every weeknight. And I'll be back tomorrow and the next day, and then Mike will be back Monday for the big Apple announcement. And that is it for Tech News Today. I'm Megan Morrone. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.